Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the session, and thank you for being here with us. I'm going to delve right into the conversation. Um, Saraid, I think I'll start with you. So you have written a novel titled Amma, which is in which at a point there is a female protagonist who takes on her abuser, and that becomes a defining moment for her daughter and her granddaughter. And your novel explores how that one experience is carried through generations, through their explorations of identity. So I think I'd start with you and your thoughts of how gender informs characterization and identity when you create fictional characters, when you write.
Okay, cool, great. I'm going to try think as I talk, obviously. Thank you so much for the question, and thank you guys for coming. Kia ora, it's so nice to be here. How gender informs my storytelling. I feel like a lot of the stories I'm interested in and drawn to and want to write about are actually about revenge, but based around things that happen to women. You know, like I'm interested in women not even taking the power back, but just getting one over, getting revenge on people. I find those stories really exciting, really interesting. So I think that, a lot of the kind of gender-based, or women specifically, like based stories that I tell and that I want to read about are about women liberating themselves through violence. Maybe I enjoy writing about it because I don't practice it, or maybe there's just something sort of fascinating about like people who are driven to that space. But yeah, I also that's my response to all of the evil things that happen to women, and that's kind of my response to, I think, domestic violence probably. But yeah, I hope that answers the question. I think I went sideways a little bit. I don't know.
I think we'll come back to those questions a little later. I would just like to go to Katerina. Katerina is a poet and a translator and an artist. And you have, besides writing your own poetry, you've also done a lot of translations. And what was interesting to me was also that you've translated both Sylvia Plath and Ted Hughes. And Sylvia Plath's a writer who's written extensively about female isolation and self-confessional poetry and all of that. So as a writer, poet, writing your own work, and having translated works of both men and women, how do you see themes of gender interpreting and informing the works of these poets? How are they different? Are there differences in sensitivities? Do you relate more? Or what has been your experience?
The reason I chose freely to translate those poems was because I loved their poetry, and because translation is a work of love and it's a work of offering. I wanted to offer this to other people who can't read English, so that's how it began. I want to say that Sylvia Plath, who is an exceptional, very, very unusual talent with a tragic life, I don't agree that her work is confessional. Her work is not confessional. It's not biography. It's like it's the transformation of her experience in a very dense and invented universe that is fascinating. And the core subject of this universe is the combination between fascination and terror, which resonates with how many people feel, and it resonates some very, very dangerous and unapproachable places in our conscience. So I find her incredibly courageous because she's the one that was able to go there and report from these areas that are so difficult for any one of us to access. So her generosity and her courage is what really moved me, apart from her incredible poetic talent. Ted Hughes is a very, very important poet, and his work has to do with nature, mainly with nature, and the way we have forgotten how to connect with nature. So he goes back with his poetry to this like primary connection with nature that we have lost in civilization. I'm not going to talk about it more, but they're two very, very different poets, and for different reasons I love them both, and I owe them a lot as a reader and as a writer. And of course I want to say that I have translated Walt Whitman, which was an incredible experience for me, not for my writing, but for my existence. And the last thing I want to say is that when you are translating, you are a little bit like an actor. So you can occupy different voices and different identities. So you don't identify yourself with the poet, female or male. You just have to love them and respect your difference from them. That's it for now. Yeah.
Coming to you, Claire, I just want to share a little trivia about Claire. My colleague at the News Minute had spoken to her in 2023 when she wrote a very interesting book about a tiger called George who lived and died in the Trivandrum Zoo. And I remember my colleague telling me about your work, about how she was really fascinated by how you could get into the mind of the animals, and how most of your work also, Claire, reflects a sort of unity between nature and all animals, including human beings. But unfortunately, we live in many, many boxes, social, constructed, gender being a very important part of that. So in your work, how do you apply the gender lens? How do you bring that into your narrative telling?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. And yes, when I received the program, I thought, oh my God. So my work is about poetry. I write, I dance, I sing, and all this thing is about doing poetry. Means to be connected with yourself and to be connected to the living being at the same time. I didn't choose, because the thing is, I am a healer. So I don't choose to feel connected to people. Some people maybe don't believe in this, but I must say, I love math, I love science, I read a lot of science. It took me a lot of time to accept that I am a healer. It's like that. So then, poetry is about exploring beyond the norms, beyond the borders. So my work is about metamorphosis. So I check my poems. And a few years ago, I wrote a poem called A Woman Abroad. I spent a lot of time in India at that time, so I wrote in English directly. And it was about refusing to be in a box, refusing a fixed role. Because I am a performing artist, I know you take a role, you drop a role. Then you can stick on it. But it's your choice in a way. You can do practices to not stick on it, you know? Because now, of course, I am a female. But I'm not only a female. Because now, actually, in my DNA, I am the heritage of men, women, some fishes maybe. And now I'm sitting, and this guy, I don't know, maybe it's a female, because I don't know enough about mangoes to know. But it's here, no? So yes, I live I know the social norms, because I am a woman, and sometimes there is a kind of violence. We can feel it. But then, I think I'm trying always to perform it, you know? So then, what I can say is, I used some myth. In France, we have a creature, a monster. She's called Mélusine. And in a way, she is both women and female and male, even not women, or, you know. And I think at a certain time, poetry healed me, giving me the strength to expose myself. 10 years ago, I would have never started saying, okay, I am a healer, guys, because I couldn't face it. So I went through my poetry to expose a monster. So as a woman, if I expose myself as a monster, then I get my strength. Thank you.
So I also wanted to ask all of you, you're all writers, multidisciplinary artists, and art is also a space where which sort of unifies and brings out emotions more emphatically than when we explain them theoretically. Experiences of whatever, happiness, joy, this palpable sense of violence when it comes to gender, like you said. So I also wanted to just speak a little bit about how you look at the power of storytelling, of art, in bringing out these identity-based questions, these existential questions, especially in the framework of gender and identity.
I think art is designed in a way to create new design of thinking, to show different things. So for me, I make a distinction between, of course, maybe my strange stories where many perspectives are there, human perspective, animal perspective, saying that yes, there is a culture in any mammals. Taking the time, maybe it won't be published, but this is art. Because maybe you don't know her, but I am a fan of a poet. Her name is Marina Tsvetaeva. I speak Russian. I learned Marina Tsvetaeva. It's a wonderful poet, and you can ask every poet here. Everyone knows her. So many people did PhD on Marina Tsvetaeva, and she has never been published. Never. So art, there are two different things. This is the art you are doing, and this is the art which is selling.
Art, poetry is a complicated way of thinking that helps us connect and understand the world we live in. So storytelling is an empowering medium of bringing to light these voices that were perhaps silenced or were not able to speak out for themselves. It brings about the uniqueness of each human being. And by bringing about the uniqueness, it makes them valuable and sacred. And I like very much the idea of anybody. Anybody has a story. Anybody carries a story, and we all carry other people. People we know and people we don't know. These might be people that come from our family, or might be people that we read in novels. So by reading novels and by reading stories, we become carriers of other people. And it is very, very important to carry other people, because if you don't carry anyone, you might be lighter, but you cannot walk. You cannot find your way. By carrying people in any way, you become heavier, but at the same time, you're able to cross the world. Building, understanding, compassion, and acceptance of what is different from you. So storytelling is very, very important in realizing and giving value to otherness.
I love the chain, the way the mic returns. Read The Power of Storytelling. I was actually having a conversation with someone I met today about fiction and why I think reading novels is important, or reading anything that isn't purely like theoretical, and reading something that explores your imagination, someone else's imagination, reading something that moves you. Like, I think so there's a lot of conversation, or I used to work in a bookstore, right? And the way that men and women bought books was so different. Like, it was, and this is not same everywhere. This was in Auckland, in Aotearoa, New Zealand. There were so few men who bought fiction. So many men just read nonfiction in this place that I worked in. And I was trying to tell this person I was talking to today about books that reading fiction is like, it's an experience, right? You're not reading to extract something from the novel. You're reading for the joy of it. Like, the space between you and the book, that's so individual, and no other reader is going to have that same experience with that book. You almost can't convey it to another person also. And I just feel like that is such a special space.
So just to also contemporize the discussion a little bit, I think it is only fair for us to talk about the art and the artist, especially because we're talking about literature and gender. I think one of the biggest conversations in literature the last year has been about Alice Munro and maybe Neil Gaiman, and about artists, about writers who, both of them writers who have been accused of either protecting sexual harassers, or Neil Gaiman has been accused of sexual assault and violent crimes, but their novels invariably speak about empathy, of imagination, of connection, and things like that. So I also want to steer this conversation in this direction and ask all three of you, do you think writing, creative fiction, or any art for that matter, can or should it exist outside a place of political scrutiny?
I think this is a very difficult question, and it does not exist outside of political. It can't exist, because art is the result of social and political circumstances. Anyway, it is a product of social and political circumstances. Even though it might not be intended from the artist as such, but if it is art, then it somehow brings about these qualities anyway. So I find this discussion difficult, but also a bit dangerous from different perspectives, because if we get too much in this information about private lives of artists, we will lose something, because I think that the work of art or books have to do with us. They don't have to do with the person who wrote them. So we would start to exclude many things, and there is a culture around this exclusion of things according to contemporary ideas around identity, gender, and everything else. I find it quite dangerous, this exclusion, because I will say why. Because it's like it impoverishes, it diminishes the field of experience in the art world that we could have. And I prefer to feel that we read something or we see something in order to get something for ourselves, not in order to know the person who created it, but in order to find something that we connect to within this work of art. So,
but
yeah.
with the knowledge of a person's private life, or with the knowledge, I mean, I'm asking you this because a lot of readers, especially of fiction, feel it's a very personal experience because you're reading, you're imagining. There is no other visual cue than what you imagine, and you automatically sort of identify the work's morality and the work's sense of empathy as that of the writers. You attribute that persona to the writer, and your love for the writer and the respect for the writer also stems from the kind of sensitivity or the connection you get from their work.
Yeah, I don't agree. I
Okay.
don't agree with that. I think this is the wrong way to do it. You shouldn't think of the writer. You should think of the work and of yourself. Yeah.
There's this writer who sends out a newsletter, and I read it pretty regularly. His name's Brandon Taylor. He's an American writer. He released a really interesting letter after Alice Munro died, and her daughter released her statement and said what had happened to her. And his position was that he never expected Alice Munro to be a good person, which I thought was really interesting. He didn't require that of her to enjoy her work. It didn't, and he, shared some stories about his abuse, like that he'd suffered as a child, when he released this statement. I thought that was really an interesting position, kind of echoing what Katerina said about like not overly identifying with the writer, with the work. So I thought that was really interesting. I had never read, when he said that, I had never read someone say that so specifically, just being like, I didn't need the writer to be a good person to enjoy their work. So I found that really interesting. I also think that this conversation around art and artist is very different between different generations. Like, I feel like the generations, maybe not exactly my generation, but generations slightly younger, I'm 33, by the way, do kind of have quite a very much not separating art and artist thing. And I think maybe older generations are able to do it. That's just something I've noticed, are able to do it a little smoother. But I also think that it's like personal, right? Like, I personally cannot read Neil Gaiman now, but that's also because he did a lot of what he did in the place that I'm from, and it's like just very, very close to home. And also, I opened this session by saying that my book is about a little girl who kills her abuser. So I kind of feel like different things hit different people, But I did really appreciate this idea that I like this idea of not overly identifying with the artist. And I do think that if you expect the artist to be a certain sort of way, you're always going to be disappointed no matter what, because so much of that expectation is based on you. Anyway, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I use avatars. Some I admit, some I don't. And one day I was in a bookshop a long time ago, and I found a poetry book, and the name was, it's difficult to translate it in English, but it's a name of a definition, a scientific name of a type of grass. And I love this book, but I didn't know who named it. So for me, the thing is, we live in a world which is framed in such a way. Now it's globalization. So of course art is connected with politics, but which politics? Now we are like looking in the window of the neighbor, and the neighbor lives like 8,000 kilometers from home, right? So I'm dreaming like if someday we can just write a book and just give it, no? What is the matter if people can see it's us? And the same for the reading. I really don't like the story of Céline, the writer. But I remember the first time I read a page. You know, it's a language. It's such a way of saying things. So I don't know what to say more, but it's just a feeling.
So all of you, I think, also spoke about finding that sense of joy in reading, which is so personal, away from what the writer might be in their personal life and whatever scrutiny they might be going through in their public life.
Sorry, I just want to say something. Maybe it's too much spiritual to say, but I think we all evolve also. You know, there's
True.
two separated things. People can change, hopefully. So it also means that the boxes are very big problem. Because if someone said, you are, I don't know, crazy, so how can you get out from this box? I'm speaking generally, not...
On a lighter note, though, can you also share, all of you, about the first time that you read something and you really identified with it? It could be a sense of identification based on gender or based on ethnicity, and decided that this is what moves me. This is why I want to write. Was there ever a moment? Was there ever a person or a writer? Just to know a little bit more about your creative processes, what goes on in your minds.
Well, the first thing that came into my mind, and I'm not going to, think about it, is a very well-known book written by an American writer who I can't remember her name now, a woman. It's called A Tree Grows Up in Brooklyn. It's a very beloved book, very well-known, and I was fascinated... Betty Smith, yes, by Betty Smith. And it is very, very much from a perspective of a teenage girl. And this book is, I think it has it all as a feminist book, because it's a girl that is also class related, because this family is very poor, and the father is a failure, the mother is trying, then the women are really claiming their sexual identity, their desire. The girl wants to get out of there and study, and so it had it all, and I found it fascinating. It didn't have to do with my writing, but this girl wants to be a writer, so I kind of identified with her. Francie.
Thank you for this question, because actually I forgot about it, but when I was 12, I fell in love with a French writer. Her name is Colette. She wrote, it was creative stories, but rooted in her life. And actually, it's very connected with gender, because she used to perform on a stage, and sometimes she played female, sometimes she played male. And she was very fluent, right? So I didn't know if reading Colette opened my mind to writing, but it definitely pushed me on a stage.
Is it different on stage? What is it that distinguishes stage performance for you, as with your relationship with the art, your relationship with yourself?
In a way, for me, this is the same. I write like I write because I dance. So it starts in the same way, means my skin and my bones are trying to feel the environment. Then, if I write a story, I have to build it. So I have to find a way to structure it. But dance is also about structure. But me, I focused a long time on learning how to improvise, means to write in a second with your body. So I realized that if I am a female, I am short, so you will always see me short and female. But if in my feelings, from my brain to all my body, I am really in my muscles, you will And if I do the same movement after, feeling like I am the wind, you will feel differently. So for me, writing, this is the same. This is how I am trying to connect with a tiger.
Pretty much all the characters I identified with when I started reading were boys, which does speak to like what I think about gender, which is that it is a social construction. But some of the best reading experiences that I've had were less about identifying and more about, like when I read The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, since we were talking about her, I forgot I was in my room reading. I was surprised when I looked up from the book and I was in my bedroom. I don't know, and I never had that experience before of being shocked that I wasn't inside the book. It sounds so insane when I say it out loud, but that's actually what it felt like. And then also when I read Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, I was 18 and I had just started at university and I was so stressed and sort of out of my depth. And I read that book slower than I had ever read any book before that. So I would only read 10 minutes a night, 15 minutes a night, and it felt like the book was living alongside me. It just really existed in my world for so long because I sustained it for so long. And I used to sort of gobble up books that I loved, eat them really, really fast. And then with that book, I didn't do that. And I was like, God, there is something so special about living with a book like that, yeah.
Earlier, Saraid, when you were talking, you spoke about an observation where you said that at a certain place you noticed that women consume more fiction and men consume more of non-fiction.
Yeah, I kind of don't want to make that generalization here because I think maybe that's just that's localized. I don't know, but yes.
But do you think that there?
Okay, go off.
Yeah, it is also statistically true.
Great.
Yeah, I was coming to that. So, do you think? Have you wondered why that could be statistically true?
Yeah, I think that it's because of this. I have thought about it. I think it's the same reason why a lot of my friends who are women ask me more questions about my life than my friends who are men. I think it's curiosity about other people. I think women have that in spades. As I said, this is a big generalization, but I'm just trying to, I'm trying to answer. But yeah, I think it's about curiosity. I think that I read because I'm curious about people specifically, not just about what I can get from someone.
Katerina, what do you think? Are women more curious? Is that why statistically they consume? This is not a generalization. We're not trying to make a statement. We're just trying to explore this. Why do you think? Why do you imagine this could be true?
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with Saraid about curiosity, and it's again a social structure because men brought up in the way that they're not very comfortable in expressing their feelings, and they're not very comfortable in analyzing themselves. So they tend to do more practical things, or things that are more based in facts. So nonfiction, theory, science. In my circle of friends, all my men friends read fiction, of course. But I would say it's again a kind of entrapment in a social structure, and my first cousin who works in a bank, had never read any book in his life, and he started reading because he had to take the metro every day. So he started reading literature when he was 45 years old. And he said to me, because by now, 10 years from now, he has read everything. And he said, when I started reading literature, I discovered myself, and I discovered how to think about myself. And also he said, I found such great consolation because I could see myself in other people. And so I realized I was not alone. So we have to encourage men to read more fiction, I think.
So I don't know about statistics, but I really agree with you about education. So there's a big difference between generations. Thanks to my activity, I have friends who are female or male, different, all the range of generation. And I think you have to allow yourself to look into a mirror when you read a book. And what I've noticed that my friend who are men and from the generation of 20 to 35, they allow more themselves to face their emotions, to cry, to be vulnerable, so to look into a mirror.
Sorry, I just feel like I should also specify that when I'm talking about men in that context, I'm talking about straight, cisgender men. Yeah, I don't think that queer men come into that same category.
Yeah, so I was coming to that about your book. Your book is also, Amma, is also thematically not just situated in the binary. It goes outside of that. There's a lot of introspection into intersectional identities. It spans so many places. There's New Zealand, there's Sri Lanka, there's London, there's so many places, settings in your novel. So could you speak a little bit about that, about setting out to write the book, about exploring so many different identities, that too in a format of intergenerational storytelling? So what made you choose that format? Do you think that helps to bring out these themes better? What was it like?
Yeah. Okay, so my book follows 3 generations of women in one family, and it swaps between all of their lives. It goes from like the 1950s to the 2010s, and then to the 1980s, and It jumps all over the place, and which was very hard to actually write and make sense of. But the construction of it, I think, is really based around how trauma recurs and returns to the generation that didn't even experience that same incident. So that's why the book bounces like that and kind of ripples, because of the way that experiences show up in someone's body, I think. It is a really varied, there's lots of different experiences, different kinds of people in the book, which I think is just reflective of my life, really, and the kind of people I know. But the book moves so much because of the way that experiences move through us. We can't always figure out when they'll show up, or when something will hurt us the most, or when we'll forgive someone. So, yeah, that's why the book moves like that.
Speaking about how books move, all 3 of you spoke about how fiction also releases us from the entrapment of our conditionings, and how fiction in that sense is educative. I'm talking about this because a lot of times in the broader scheme of things, fiction's also sort of sometimes dismissed as a hobby. It's imagination, it's not even real. But the power of fiction to, like you all said, educate, to sensitize. Like, we could read a lot about wrong things happening, terrible things happening to people, but when that happens to a character that you really like, you feel what it's like to be there, and you start thinking this is not fair, and a lot of these ideas get into your mind. So what are your thoughts about using this power of fiction to empathize? Like, is there something, has something Is there something that we can do? Is something to be done about that? About pushing fiction as a medium to sort of release us from our biases, to look at things with more sensitivity? Do you think that fiction in that sense is not given it the seriousness that it, it's not given the seriousness that it deserves in that sense?
It's already working like this. I don't think we should do anything, to use it. But it's very, very crucial that we, help create libraries, create structure and infrastructure to make it accessible to more people. This is what we can do as active citizens, as artists that propose things to politicians and governments. This dissemination of art that is quite important. And to comment a little bit to what Saraid said before, which I find very, very important, this intergenerational trauma that we realize is there concerning gender, but other issues as well, as displacement, coming from, the experience of being a refugee, etc. But since we're talking about gender, I have realized how important storytelling is in connecting these traumatic histories and the realization that we are connected and that we come from traumatized human beings. And this helps us see the women in our lives or in our family through a different light, to understand them better, even if we have very different ideologies and ideas about them, to understand their lives better. And so storytelling becomes very, very important to bring into light this linked traumatic histories and maybe build a way towards healing.
Yes, about the fiction, I don't know if we can do something more or if we should do, but there is a story from the First Nation in America, the way you memorize. So they say some memories are cold and some memories are hot. And you remember what is hot, because what is hot is connected to your body also. This is not only the intellect. So the fiction is what touch your feelings, but also it's like you said, you live with the book for some time, so it's your neighbor, And also scientifically, it's also because we have neurons and we can really connect deeply with someone, just following the story, following the rhythm. And of course, the cold memory is anything comes only through the intellect. So you can remember for some time, but it doesn't help you, for instance, to change the way you behave. Maybe fiction can do that.
I feel like there's a book called Minor Detail by a Palestinian writer called Adania Shibli, and that is to me, that was it was a devastating book to read, but that explained more to me about the Israeli occupation of Palestine than all of the nonfiction that I had been reading sort of alongside it. So yeah, that was just a really good example for me of how fiction can really give you this intense clarity about a situation.
I think we have around 15 minutes before we end the session. I would also like to open this for questions, if any. We can take a couple of questions.
This is just to You mentioned that reading Marquis' love in the times of cholera was like bit by bit. It was like the book was like a boyfriend to you, or a neighbor to you, or a companion to you. So, could you please explain what is the Marquis experience altogether? And now, just now, you said about the Palestinian fiction taught you more than any extensive non-fiction. So, could you please elaborate on it?
Sorry, elaborate on how the Gabriel Garcia Marquez book
yes. And then
stayed with me.
Yes, and then the Palestinian.
Yeah.
You the fiction taught you more than the non-fiction.
And talk about how minor detail was better for me than non-fiction.
Oh.
Yeah. What do I mean by living with love in the time of cholera? I had something to look forward to every night that was like nothing to do with my life, and that was so cool. And I think maybe I was an only child till I was 12, so I didn't kind of have much else to do. And I think I was always just trying to finish. Maybe I was trying to finish a book more than I was trying to enjoy it. Not that I didn't enjoy it, but maybe the pace changed the way I read books forever afterwards, I think. And then
how Marquis influenced you in your sub-teen years?
I don't know if the book influenced. I mean, it showed me really good writing, but I don't know if it influenced me more than being an enjoyable experience. It was probably the first time I'd read magical realism as well. Yeah.
I think it shocked me.
Yeah.
I read it when I was 17, I think, and it shocked me when Fermina Daza suddenly said no to the lover who had been pursuing her. And I remember telling my friend that this book is like putting a brain in a washing machine. I was that shocked. So I can completely relate to living with the book, Love in the Time of Cholera. Yes.
Thank you all. Your words have truly enriched this gathering and sparked meaningful reflections.